Welcome to the You Are Not Invisible After 50 podcast. This isn't just another podcast, it's a game changer. Here, we're flipping the script, challenging outdated norms and shining a spotlight on bold, unstoppable women who are making an impact. These extraordinary women aren't waiting for permission. They're breaking barriers, inspiring generations, and proving what's possible. And here's the best part. This podcast isn't just for those over 50, whether you're 25, 45, or beyond. There's wisdom, inspiration, and empowerment here for everyone. So get ready for powerful conversations, game-changing insights, and plenty of motivation to fuel your journey. Stay tuned because this week's guest is bringing something truly special and you won't want to miss it. Here's something I noticed talking to women over 50, and I mean really talking to them. Most of us are just getting started. We're not past it. We're not invisible. We are not done. The world just needs to sit up and notice because we haven't even hit our stride yet. I'm Kieran. This is You Are Not Invisible After 50, and this show exists for every woman who knows there's more in her. More to build, more to say, more to do. Every week I sit down with women who start waiting for the right moment and just go for it. If that's you or the woman you're working towards, you're in the right place. Today, my guest is Lisa Brancatisano. She's bold, creative, and unconventional. She left home to learn a language and ended up creating a life shaped by art, adventure, and possibility. I wanted her on this show for a reason, and you'll hear why. Stay with us because something in this conversation may feel more familiar to you than you expect. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. And how are you? Look at the clothing difference. You have a t-shirt on with no sleeves, and I'm back in the jumper because it's been
Because
raining the last couple of days. So,
it's stinking hot here in Florence. And actually, this is my studio, but I actually don't have air conditioning in here. So it's okay now, but yeah, it gets really warm.
I envy you. I envy you. Oh dear. Back into British weather and back into winter clothes. We fluctuate between the two very quickly. Right, let's get into it. I'd like you to tell our audience of who you are in one line or more.
Hi, I'm Lisa Brancatisano, an Australian living in Florence for the past 20 years, and I am a watercolor artist, and I also teach.
I actually came across you through a guest of mine. You follow her, and then you followed me, and I thought, oh, let's go into your
Yes.
profile. Being nosy as I am, I'm always looking for women who are different. And
Mm.
I found you, and I just loved what you are doing. And of course, we're going to go into your story in a moment, but your artwork is exquisite. It's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's go into your story. Let's begin in the past. Where would you like to start in telling your story? Take us on a journey.
Well, I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, to an Italian father. Italian, he was 8 when his family immigrated from Italy. He's one of 9 children. So I always say I grew up in Melbourne saying I'm Italian because I had such a big Italian family. My father was the only one who didn't marry an Italian, though. So our mother was English, and I have a twin sister and 2 brothers. And growing up, I did kind of study a little bit of Italian, but dad never spoke with us. And if he did speak Italian with our relatives, it was Calabrese, a dialect that I still to this day do not understand. So I got to a certain age, I got to 21, and my parents said, do you want a 21st birthday party or we'll give you the airfare to go overseas? I had already been working by that stage. I studied fashion design and was working, and I decided to resign from my job and go to Florence to learn Italian. And I bought a one-way ticket because I had no intention of doing a quick trip. I wanted to just see where it took me. And I had no really concrete plans after the 1 month language course that I'd enrolled in. And before I left, I also did a nanny course because I thought that could be a great fallback. And we're talking 1993. So this is pre internet, obviously, pre Google, everything. So I thought that'd be a good fallback if while I'm traveling, I need some work. So I arrived in Florence. I got the wrong train from the station to Florence, met a lovely Italian who put me on the right track. And then a week after I arrived, I was admiring some of the art and artists that like work outside the Uffizi Gallery, the street artists. And I struck up a conversation with one of them. And then, long story short, he ended up teaching me watercolor and we ended up going out and I stayed with him for about 2 years. So I used to sit with Marco out the front of the Uffizi, learning watercolor and helping him with translating as well and selling art to tourists. And it was just really wonderful.
Can I just ask, let's just go back a little bit because I think that's
Yeah.
fascinating. The fact is that your father emigrated from Italy to Australia.
Yeah.
What made him do that? And you said that he was the only one who married an English woman. So
Yeah.
how was that for him?
I think because he was one of the younger of all the siblings. So it was my grandfather who really had the courage to, he realized, I think, in the town that they were living in, that there was really no future for them. The trip to Australia, Australia was offering, the voyage for free. And so my grandfather went first to find work. Then a little bit later, the two older brothers went. And what I find fascinating is it wasn't until 5 years later that then my grandmother went with the other 7 children, including my father. So I often think about being on a boat for 30 days with 7 children with no, like, the technology, iPads, entertainment that we're used to nowadays. So I just think, not knowing the language, not knowing what she was going to find. And just something like too, the reason that probably my dad, my mum was English, but when they arrived, they changed their names. They, gave up their Italian citizenship to become Australian. My father is Giuseppe. He changed his name to Joseph. So they really embraced this new kind of, nationality and country that they had immigrated to. So because my father was 8, he was probably, and I think lucky to say, probably a bit more liberal than a lot of his older brothers who are a lot more conservative and Southern Italian in their way of thinking. In fact, my sister and I would joke that growing up, I'm never going to marry an Italian. And the ironic thing is that my sister and I both now live here in Italy. So, yeah, that's why, Dad, I said to him once, because someone said, "Oh, what boat was your father on?" And I said, "Did you know where you were going when you got on this boat when you were 8?" And he said, "Oh, everyone said, oh, we're going to America, we're going to America." And then I said, "Oh, I had a question from someone." And they said their father traveled the same time. What was the name of the boat you were on? And he said, "Oh, the boat was named Australia." I
Wow.
said,
Okay.
"Well, didn't that tell you where you were going?" So yeah, but they worked really hard. And my dad is turning 80 this year and he still works. He has his own business. They've always worked, the family have always worked in the fruit and vegetable business. So I also feel I grew up very spoiled with like incredible produce at home.
And having an English mother, I mean, was there you said your father was liberal because he was the
Yeah.
youngest. Was marrying your mother, was that, how did that affect, the relationship or, how did that come about, first of
Well,
all?
I think growing up, I thought my father was very strict. Okay. We thought he was really strict, why can't we go out on a Friday night? Everyone else is. And a lot of things he wouldn't let us do. But looking back on it, and mum would always be there to say, "Joe, let the girls do this." She was kind of like our little advocate, would stand up for us. But looking back now, I know he was not, he was a normal parent because also when Tony, my sister and I were 15, we were exchange students to America. Now, I know a lot of my older uncles would not have allowed their daughters to do that. So the fact that Dad said yes, we could do it when we asked, we were really surprised. And he has been, and to this day, like my mum has since passed away and I'm incredibly close with my father. I kind of talk to him about everything. Like I used to, call my mother all the time to ask her opinion on something. And she would always say, "Well, you're going to do what you want to do anyway." So now, like, my father's kind of stepped into that role where I kind of consult with him on everything.
Oh, how lovely is that?
Yeah, he's a real sweetheart.
You actually then you said you went to America as an exchange student. How did that
Mm.
come about?
Someone came to our school and basically was talking about it. And Tony and I were like, "Oh my gosh, this would be amazing." So I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Tony was placed in Phoenix, Arizona. So we were close, but that really changed, I think, a lot for me in as far as I always said I got the travel bug after that. It really opened my eyes to this whole new world. And of course, even going to American high school was so different because I went to a private school. It was co-ed in Melbourne, but we wore a uniform, no makeup. It was very, So I was 15. I did my junior high school year in the States, and to go to this American high school where the girls were wearing makeup, and it was just totally different. But that was really life changing. I think that's when I came back to Melbourne after that, and really felt like I had had this huge experience, and felt like almost time had stayed still, stopped in where, like when I'd left. And I think a lot of people who travel find that you come back and people don't really want to hear all the details about your trip, and you also can't really I don't think express enough. It's like taking a photo and saying it doesn't do it justice. You have to be there or something like that. So I just, and then not long after that, I actually left school because I decided I wanted to study fashion design. I didn't want to do like another 2 years of high school, 4 years of university. And there was this new course, which was a full intensive kind of like on the job course. So I decided to do that. It was very practical. And then I got out in the industry. So I was working at 17 and learnt on the job, basically.
So you were there for how many years doing fashion design?
I started working when I was 17. Then when I was 22, I left. So I'd started off, my first job was in a little bridal boutique. So I was like the dressmaking assistant. And then from there, I went and worked at a company called Jag Jeans, which was huge in the 70s and 80s, kind of like the Gap Jeans of Australia, you could say. And in those days, a lot of the manufacturing was still done in Australia, and we would make all of our salesman samples in-house. So my job was to help cut, add like the little buttons and rivets on the jeans. And it was great. It was it was a fantastic office, beautiful environment. So I was there and I worked my way up to being design assistant to the women's wear designer. And I resigned from there. So then when I came to Italy, yeah, it was like for me also because I'd been working so much and it was so full on. It was like just so lovely to come here and just exhale and just enjoy it all and take it all in and learn the language, which was really frustrating.
It was frustrating, but that led you to actually this artist who you met on the
Yeah.
street. So how did
Yeah.
that kind of event happen? Go on, get into that little bit of detail.
I did. No, I liked his art. I was really looking at it and debating whether to buy something. And then we got chatting and he said, would you like your portrait? And I was like, no, no. But he wasn't a portrait artist. And he said, no, no. He goes, I need to practice. Would you like your portrait for free? And I was like, okay. So while he's doing the portrait, we start to chat. And he was quite cute. And then he said towards the end, do you have any plans tonight? I've bought some fish. This is the I bought some fish. If I don't eat it tonight, it's going to go off. I have to throw it out. Would you like to come over for dinner? So I was like, oh, okay. So I went for dinner and the rest is history. So, yeah.
And and how did you really get into the watercolor kind of arena space?
Because that's what he pretty much did. His background was architecture and he had kind of left his career because he realized it was much more, I guess enjoyable, and he was actually earning some good money doing the watercolors. So he started to teach me, we would do a lot of little miniatures that we would sell. And I at first would prepare the drawings for him, and then he would say, okay, follow me, do the shadows first. This is how we do this. And so I feel, it wasn't any formal school watercolor training, but I have to say, when I did my fashion design, I really loved the fashion illustration side of things. My sister always said, you're the creative twin, because she was a nurse. She did nursing. So I just loved it. I found it really, I just found like I felt really, I'd really found this new kind of creative kind of outlet that was really great. I always, thought, he was amazing. I felt like I was never as good as what he was. So yeah, that was how I kind of, got into it, and then would start and had my own little set of paints. And I do have to say, then I did stay here for about 2 years, and then I kind of got itchy feet, and then decided to leave Italy, and then I went to London because I wasn't quite ready to go back to Australia.
Okay, so now you're in London. What did you do in London then? What brought you there?
I was a nanny, and quite funny. I think I mentioned to you when I went to Australia, Melbourne, this past Christmas, and I thought it was lost, but I found this diary that from when I came here to Italy. So it's been quite amazing reading. But I didn't realize this diary here. It's also got the advertisement from the Lady magazine that my aunt had sent me with the job for the nanny job I took. So there was something about this job that kind of it said two kids, a dog, and a piano, or something like that. And I wrote, and Martine, the mother, said to me, "Okay, I'll fly you to London for the interview. If I decide to like employ you, I'll cover the whole flight and accommodation." And I was lucky because I was actually going to stay in a hotel, and then she ended up saying, "Look, just come and stay with us." So I stayed with the family for a whole weekend, got to really kind of bond with the children. And actually, I took a photo album of my family to share with them. And she always said, she goes, "That's what really struck me." She said it was quite beautiful to see how much your family meant to you. And so she gave me the job. So I worked with the Montgomery family for 11 months, and it was fantastic. It was a great job. I was in a really great area. I was in Chelsea. I had my own car. The father, David, photographer originally from America. So we would go to Florida for holidays. So yeah, and I'm still friends with them today, which is
Oh,
fantastic. I went and
fantastic.
yeah.
And also, then once you've been to London, where did you
Mm.
go next? Where did you go from London to?
I got deported and went back home.
You got deported. Was it actually a deportation?
Yeah, I literally, so okay, so I had got my visa here in Florence before going. Now, I don't know if it was a lost in translation situation, but I thought I was legal. I was paying taxes, and I thought I could stay there for a year. What I didn't know in the fine writing was that I was only supposed to work full time for 6 months or part time for 12 months. So I came back from a trip with the family. I don't know why I was by myself, but I came back before them and flew into Gatwick, and they started to ask me about my work and my hours. And then they said, "Oh, okay, so you pretty much work full time. How long have you been with them?" And I was like, "Oh, 11 months, you know." And then they said, "Can you come with us?" 3 hours later, after questioning 3 hours, they kind of would call me in, call me out, went through all my luggage, went through everything. They were very invasive. No phones at that time, but I'd been writing a letter. They read that. Um, and then they said, "We're keeping your passport. We're going to deport you. You have overstayed your visa, or you have, like not followed the rules of your visa." Um, so my aunt worked at the Australia High Commission. So basically, I called her and she said, "Buy a ticket and leave earlier than what they're wanting to send you. So you show you're leaving voluntarily." And then she must have spoken to someone because I got a call the day before I was supposed to leave, a lovely Irish immigration officer who just said to me, "We've really looked at your case and we've reversed the decision. You're welcome to stay." And by that stage, I'd been away from home for nearly 3 years.
Hmm.
And in that kind of like 10 days, I'd kind of like gone, "Okay, time to go home now." And,
Hmm.
I was already thinking with the family that I was going to kind of move on. So, yeah, I left and I went back to Melbourne and got a job then working with Stussy Sister, so another fashion brand in Melbourne.
And how long were you there for?
Then until like for another probably, like 15 years or something. So then in the meantime, my sister came to London because friends of the family I was working for had triplets, and they said they needed a new nanny for 6 months. And I said, "Oh, my sister would be perfect. She's a nurse." So they spoke to her over the phone, flew her over. So she was in London at this stage. I was back in Australia. And then back in Australia, I joined a painting group on a Saturday morning. It was a women's group, but there I was painting with acrylics and oils. So totally different, but it was really lovely. Like just every Saturday we'd meet and paint whatever we wanted to. And then I was back working. And then my sister met her husband here. So I flew back to spend time with her. And then while I was here, friends of hers, this was in 2006, was a shoe distributor in Florence, and he had started to distribute some clothing brands. And his daughter was a friend of my sister's daughter, and we just got chatting about the fashion industry. And then he said, "Would you like a job? Would you like an interview or something like that?" And we were on the beach, and he said, "I need someone with apparel experience." And I just thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm being offered a job in fashion in Florence.
Mm.
Like, I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So, and he also, it was just like, I felt so, he had an empty apartment and he just said, "Go to IKEA, furnish it how you want, we'll pay for it." And it was in a really great area. And it was just fantastic. And because he distributed a lot of like so Dr. Martens, Ugg, Steve Madden, a lot of really big kind of iconic brands. We traveled a lot. Like I traveled a lot to the States, to UK, to Amsterdam, everything, and it was fantastic. I loved it. It was such a great job, and I worked there for 12 years until 2019.
And the watercolor, was that just kind of pushed back a little bit? Yeah.
Yep. I found an old Instagram stories, and I think it's still there on my page where in the About Me. So I need to update it where it says it's a painting and one of my acrylics or oils. And it says, I used to paint, one day I'll pick up the brushes again.
Mm-hmm.
So backtrack a little bit, 2015, I'm on my second maternity leave. And I decided, I think I thought I wanted to write a book, but also when my job was marketing and blogs were starting to, and I thought, oh, I wonder what's involved in making a blog or writing a blog. So I created a blog. It was called My Tuscan Journal, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
exist anymore. And I thought that'd be a good idea for the book draft. So I can start to write it. And then eventually when I want to do my book, all the work will be there. And then I turned it into a magazine, like a printed magazine. And
Mm-hmm.
then the boss from the fashion job, in the meantime, had bought two little boutique hotels in Florence as a bit of a side thing. And so I said to him, do you want to print these? We'll put them in the guest rooms. It'll be a record of like their time here in Florence. Plus, we'll put a little ad for the hotel in the back. And for me, I thought this is the intent, like this will give me a little bit of a, I know I have to get this out each month type of thing.
Mm.
And then and he loved it. And he was like, yeah, so they would pay for the printing. And it started off as a 14-page stapled thing. And in the end, it became like a 60-page with, proper binding. I've actually got one here I should show, magazine. And then it was passion project, totally. I didn't make any money from it. I got to meet some incredible people because I would write about not only where to go, but I would cover like businesses and stories of families that, generational stories here in Tuscany. And then there was the recipe section. So for the month or the season, and my sister, who is now an incredible food blogger, she would help with the recipes. I'd also was working with a great chef here. And then we'd have a cocktail of the month and I'd go to Harry's bar and I'd go, what cocktail should we do today? And then so it was beautiful. And it was printed on beautiful paper and it was meant to be kind of like a coffee table magazine that you would keep, and is it something that I really wanted people to keep and use like a book. So then I decided to resign from the fashion job in 2019 to focus on this magazine. And then I thought I can do shopping and food tours in Florence as well. So it was all going to be this whole kind of thing. And then COVID happened. So then
Oh.
I had no work because I had decided to leave a reliable paying job where I was an employee to become self-employed, which in Italy, if anyone knows being self-employed here, challenging. And to focus on something in tourism. And then, of course, there was no tourism here anymore. It was very hard. We weren't living in this house. We were living in a smaller place right in the center of Florence. We had no outdoor space, no garden. I had two young boys who were homeschooling. And so and I also, I was a bit, I will say, I was quite depressed because not only like I had no work, I was quite worried about what the future was going to be. I did something to my neck. I couldn't sleep. It was like a pinched nerve or something. I was in so much pain. And I remember I had just decided, like this, I think 6 months earlier, I'd started to do these seasonal collections. So the last 5 years of the magazine, I'd put into like a summer, winter, spring, autumn collection. So it was 4 issues. And I had nearly finished the spring one. And then I was like, well, what am I going to finish it for? There's no one here to sell it to. I can't even sit at my computer. I'm in so much pain, whatever. So I ended up finally going to see a doctor, got it fixed. And then I thought, just finish it for yourself, Lisa. Print, like maybe 20 copies and give them to the people that you wrote about. And at least then you've got your 4 issues and maybe you can sell, because I would sell a digital version online. So, so I finished that. And one of the stories I was writing about in summer was of a beautiful area of southern Tuscany called Maremma. And Maremma is beautiful. It's very kind of different to what you think of the classic Tuscan Cypress Hills. It's kind of more wild. There's a lot of beautiful national parks. There's the sea, and there's a lot of those beautiful kind of umbrella pines. And I had this gorgeous photo of a driveway to this stunning resort with the pines and the cypress and the poppies in the field. And I thought that'd make a beautiful painting. And I pulled it out just before. So I painted it this is that painting.
Lovely.
And yeah, there's so many things I don't like about it, but I pulled out my old paints and then I shared this on Instagram. And then I just started to paint a little bit because, like free time, nothing else to do. And it was really lovely to kind of get back into the painting. And then a friend of my mother-in-law said to me, "Do you think you could paint my dogs?" So I did her dog. And then just through it was, I guess I had a nice following on Instagram because of the magazine. And, also just sharing stuff about my life here in Tuscany. The magazine was called This Tuscan Life. So that's the name, obviously, of my Instagram profile and everything now. So I started to share some of the watercolors on Instagram, and then it just organically grew. I started to get requests to do, different commissions. And yeah, when I think back, I'm someone who's very impatient. I kind of get frustrated and think I should be at a certain position in my career, but I'm not. But if I really am honest and I stop and I think back about the last kind of 6 years and what I've done with my art, I do realize that I've been very, very fortunate.
I can kind of relate to that because I'm very
Hmm.
impatient. But I think one thing that we learn as we kind of move forward is that all those steps were necessary to get where you want to go,
Definitely.
where
Yeah.
you are. So those steps are your stepping stones, in fact, to get
Yes.
there. And they're so important because without them, you're not going to be anywhere. So the fact is that you started slowly, you went on Instagram, you got more of a following and use
Mm,
your magazine name in terms of the whole thing and where this takes you
yeah.
next. It just sounds so romantic and it just sounds beautiful. I think everybody, it sounds like a dream, right? Because everybody
Mm,
wants to be under the Tuscan sun at the end
yeah.
of the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of easy lifestyle, cool, chilled, whatever.
Mm,
And I just think that's what everybody wants to be, really. And to see this coming into fruition in so
mm,
many ways, it's just exciting. And you telling your story now, watching that all unfold as we spoke,
yeah.
it's just so interesting how one thing leads you to another.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's funny, I bumped into Marco, the original artist who taught me how to paint.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Oh, I've started to paint again. I'm showing you." And he said to me, "Oh, imagine how good you'd be if you'd never stopped," or something like that.
Yeah.
And I paused and I was like, "No, that wasn't the journey that I was, you know what I mean?" And I was kind of like, made me pause, but I said to him, and afterwards I thought about it and I thought, no, that wasn't the journey I was supposed to take. I probably, you know what I mean? So I didn't agree with what he said, basically. Yeah, I
Actually,
might be a better artist, but I don't know.
yeah, but the fact is that you are where you are because that's where you're supposed to be, right?
Exactly.
So you can't hurry, you think you can hurry the process. I am the most impatient person on the planet, I think.
Yeah.
Ask my kids that. But there is this thing about you cannot make things happen if they're not going to unfold for you because they
No,
weren't meant to unfold for you. You're not supposed to go down a certain path because that wasn't meant for you. So
exactly.
I think hard as it is for those who are impatient, is you have to just accept of where you are and what you're doing
Mm,
and be really kind of grateful. And this is a good lesson for me as well. And I hear myself saying this, grateful for
yeah.
where you are at this very moment in time.
And I look at too, like there's things now being, working for myself,
Mm.
negotiating things, business discussions, contracts, commissions, copyright, all this kind of stuff. I learned from working for that fashion distributor. Those
Mm.
12 years of that job, I learned a lot. And, working with big brands and understanding, and also not being afraid, like being presented with a contract, for example, and not being afraid to kind of say, well, no, I'd like to change this and I don't agree
Mm.
with that. And there's a part of me that sometimes still gets a bit like, and then I'm just like, ask, they can only say no. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But it was from working at that company where my boss would say to me, no, go back and ask for this. And I'd be like, oh, they're not going to agree to that. And then they would. And I'd be like, wow, I didn't, so yeah, I realized, like you said, all of those stepping stones of the career
Mm.
that had brought me to the person I am today.
And also, what you've just said, Lisa, that's really important because of all the skills that one has obtained, right? I'm
Yeah.
writing a piece for LinkedIn. I mean, I was in the corporate world as well. I was a program manager. And
Mm,
you think, okay, for whatever reason you left an organization, mine was disillusionment and toxicity, was that,
yeah,
I was done. But the fact is, those skills are those are with you, right? And you can
yeah,
utilize them. And if you have those skills, then you can put them into practice in a different
definitely.
environment because they're all
Mm,
transferable. And that's what you should
mm,
be really proud of. That what you've learned there in the past, you can take it forward into your present time and into the future.
definitely.
And people shouldn't lose sight of that because we're all valuable and all those skills that we've attained are all count. They all count.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So let's move on to the present time. Is there anything, before we do that,
Mm.
is there anything you want to say before we move on to what you're doing currently?
No, I think I've babbled enough. No, I
Okay.
think I could, that I could talk for hours and hours and hours.
No, I could talk for hours.
Yeah.
Maybe both of us could. Anyway, so let's move on to the present time. Let's tell the audience of what you're currently doing.
So now I teach art. So I held like watercolor workshops. So typically, they can be private, where I have like individuals contact me, and typically my workshop will go for about 3 hours. And most of my workshops are aimed at people who are absolute beginners, people who have never picked up a brush before. And then I often get called to maybe do workshops at people's retreats. So, for example, people who have done like a yoga retreat or cooking retreat, and then they say, Lisa, could you come and in that week teach my group a workshop? And they're great because a lot of people have signed up maybe for yoga or cooking. So the watercolor is something that probably they're not expecting. And I see people kind of rock up, and then like the classic is the person who says to me, I'm not creative at all. I work in finance, I'm not that. And then at the end, they say, "Oh, that was so relaxing. I
Mm,
really enjoyed that." And then I've had people that I'm still in contact with who have gone home and gone out and bought their watercolors. And I have one woman in Canada who she dedicates Sunday morning to painting, and she is fantastic. So I do get a lot of I love teaching. I really do love seeing that like God nugget. Yesterday, I had a workshop with 4 Australian women, and they hadn't really painted before either. And it was so fantastic because I was, the first hour we go through all the basic techniques, and they were like, there was all these, wow, oh, like this enthusiasm. And then at the end, I said, did you all have fun? And they said, oh, so much more than what we thought we were going to get out of
yeah.
this. That was just so lovely. And apart from learning to paint and the art side of it, Kieran, one thing that is really beautiful about having a creative practice, any type of creative, whether it's painting, cooking, ceramics, anything. And I think it's really important that we do. And I think a lot of people think that I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. It doesn't matter how good you are. Taking the time out to just do something that allows, you to kind of just switch off. You get into
Mm.
this beautiful zone, the time classes. It's really meditative. It's a really lovely therapy. So yeah, I really love kind of introducing that side of it to people.
I concur with that, and I'll tell you why.
Mm.
Because my mother was very artistic. I thought I didn't have
Hmm.
any artistic skills whatsoever. I mean, I was a scientist when I was first starting, then I became going to program management and all that stuff. I come to the end of my 50s, and I go on this splatter paint course when I moved to London. Loved it immensely, did a couple of lessons learning to just paint, not, and then I've gone off on my own. Now, my first painting, I submitted it to the Saatchi Gallery, and I got longlisted. So that was my first attempt, my first picture. So
Amazing.
I'm now excited. Well, there's two things here. First of all, I've put my paintbrush down for the moment for the last 6 months because I'm
Yeah.
kind of engrossed in what I'm doing here. But you're absolutely right. It gives you the space. It gives you something that you cannot even measure in terms of relaxation. It gives you that quietness that you need in your mind. You need that, and you don't discover that. And as you said, Lisa, you don't need to be a great artist. I mean, I never knew whether I
No.
was good or not, but
Mm.
I tried, and I realized also that those skills are innate in me. But we also get told by, oh, well, you can't draw at school, you'll never be able to draw.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or you'll never be able to paint, or
Yeah.
isn't that
Yeah.
rubbish? Those
Yeah.
are the
Yes.
comments. That
Yes.
shouldn't stop anyone from moving forward or even dabbling, right? Because
No.
what's the worst thing
Exactly.
that can happen? Who
Exactly.
cares a shit? My
Exactly.
daughter, who also loves painting, and you see artists where they, selling artwork for like thousands and thousands, and it's just a squiggle on a canvas, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter says, well, any fool could do that, right? So, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean, is that
Yeah.
it depends on who's looking at it, but it depends
Exactly.
on, oh, it doesn't matter because somebody will
Exactly.
appreciate it.
Exactly. There's something for everyone too. So
Yeah.
everyone, just because you might like something doesn't mean someone else isn't going to like, isn't going to or something or the same thing. I agree. I mean, I'm my own worst critic. I look at a lot of my work and kind of go, well, that's not perfect, and then someone
Hmm.
else will go, oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
um so I do that. I accept, I do commissions, a lot of private commissions, which is fantastic. A lot of I've done things from like obviously dog portraits. I mentioned those dog pet portraits. I've done things like wine labels, yogurt labels, like food. I love doing food illustration. I've done some menus. I did some really beautiful. I was really happy with some food illustrations for an Italian restaurant in London, La Famiglia. They celebrated 50 years last year, so that was a really great job. And then there's also a famous butcher here in Tuscany, Dario Cecchini. So he has a little shop. So I've created 5 images, and they sell them as prints, postcards, and then we also printed them on tea towels. So that's fantastic, and they're just I think I've been doing that for 3 years now with them. So, and she said to me, Dario's wife Kim, your art is just key to our shop. So that was really lovely to hear.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely.
And then I've got my own tea towel linen collection, which is mainly very Tuscan inspired. So think of olives, lemons, and oranges, Tuscan desserts, and things like that. Italian cocktails, Italian coffee, and some silk scarves as well. So it's funny too.
Fabulous.
I think the silk scarves is a bit of a, like my fashion
Hmm.
education and knowledge and everything kind of comes into play there. And that's something I really enjoy doing.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of what you're currently doing before we move on to the trigger point at 50?
I have an online course too that I created last year. So that's closed at the moment. I'm going to reopen the doors to that soon. So it's over 8 hours of videos online. That was a learning curve too, because a lot of people ask me if I taught online, especially after COVID. And I was like, no, no, I don't understand the technology. It just seems too kind of overwhelming. I just didn't want to couldn't even wrap my head around how to kind of do it. And then I kind of thought, you know, did a lot of research and thought, come on, it can't be too hard. And I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this too. Like when I first started, the first videos of me talking to the camera and talking, um, I first was like, and then I look at my last videos, I became obviously much more, confident and comfortable.
Yeah.
And also, I think too, we can become self-conscious when we know we're filming ourselves or we know something's filming, even if I'm doing something for Instagram. So it's kind of blocking that out. So I'm going to be so this summer, now it's summer here. This is my really busy, busy season. So after this busy season, I'm going to then do another series of videos, which is just going to be like spring florals. So it'll be like magnolia blossom and it'll be focused on that. And then I'll reopen the two courses together. And tomorrow I've got
Fantastic.
my first week-long retreat starting, which is exciting. So
Yes.
I'm really excited about that too.
Fabulous. And you can, do
Mm,
you want to talk about that now? Or shall we talk about it in the future? It's not quite in the future, is it? It's present. It's like now. So let's talk about it
yeah,
now. Okay, so tell us about the
happening
retreat.
tomorrow. So I've got two actually. So this one tomorrow starts tomorrow is together with a wonderful woman, Sonia from New Jersey. And we met because she's been doing these retreats here for quite a few years, mainly like yoga retreats. And I went and taught workshops with her. And she said, would you be interested in doing a whole retreat with me? So it's really, it's not 24/7 painting. We've got maybe 3 watercolor workshops in the week. the thing I'm really excited about. The first morning, we've got a ceramicist coming to the villa where we're staying, and we're all going to make our own ceramic palette that everyone will take home. So their palette and water cup. And then we've also got like a cooking class. We've got a street art tour of Florence we're going to be doing, and obviously lots of downtime because the place we're staying at is stunning, has a beautiful pool, and you're surrounded by olive groves and vineyards. So thank God the weather's beautiful this week. So that's what the next week is going to be for me. And then at the end
Fantastic.
of this month, I have another one in northern Tuscany with Annette Joseph, who is an American food stylist, and she has her own property there. So that's probably going to be a bit more centered around food. We're going to be painting a recipe card for, she just published a book on Italian desserts. So it'll be one of the, like maybe a jam tart or something, and doing like the vineyards as well. So that's a 4-day retreat. At the end of June. So yeah, I'm really excited about both of them.
Sounds very exciting indeed.
Mm.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on to the trigger point at 50. And first of all, I wish you the best of luck with all of that. So
Thank
let's
you.
let's move on to the trigger point at 50. Was there a trigger point for you at 50?
I turned 50 during COVID. Okay. So
Mm.
for me, it was a kind of non-event. And it was, so I remember when my sister and I turned 49, my sister always, she lives in Rome. She always comes to Florence. We have our birthday lunch. Okay. Because her children are much older than mine. So she's got more time that she can come here instead of me going to Rome for the day. So she comes here. And I remember when we turned 49, it was the first year of COVID, and she was like, oh, well, I'm not even going to come. All the restaurant, you can't even go out to eat. And I just said, oh, well, at least it's not our 50th. Next year, we'll have a huge celebration. It'll be our 50th. And of course, the next year, we were in lockdown again. So I remember I had a really beautiful friend who lived across the road, and her boys were the same age as mine. And she said, oh, well, why don't you just come over for some bubbles? Come over for a quick drink. We'll just have a drink, just us. And what I hadn't realized was my husband had organized a group of my girlfriends, and they were all there. And actually, I get emotional thinking about it because I had no idea. And I walked in and she said, oh, we'll come out to the gardens. And I said, oh, wow, balloons, Michaela, you've gone all out. There was like a bunch of balloons. And suddenly this group of 6 women just jumped out from their hiding. And I, speechless, which does not happen that often. And then I just burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, oh my gosh. So even though I say it was a non-event, my husband was incredible that he and Michaela my girlfriend, had organized this surprise for me to make it special. So yeah, so I can't believe I'm 55 now. So that was 5 years ago. No, not really. I just remember, yeah, that was, I never forget that day. But yeah, and then my sister and I last year went to Malta together as our belated 50th celebration. Because I said we never really did anything together for our 50th. So we went to Malta. So no trigger points really. I didn't feel like, although I have to say, I was just talking to someone today or yesterday about when I say I'm 55, I just don't associate with it. That makes sense.
I don't.
And I think we're all the same. I think when we're young, we look at that age as being like old,
Oh, God. Yeah.
My mother passed away when she was 54, 53,
Mm.
54. So the fact that I've gone past that age now,
Mm.
that really hit home for me, how young she was.
Mm.
I was 29, so I looked at her not as being old, certainly, but at the same time, now that I've gone past her age and her age, I realized, gosh, she was young, and that's so
Yeah.
unfair.
Mm.
And I think too, when you're young too, you do look at 55 as being old. I do, but now when if I see the number, I just feel like I don't associate with that.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I'm
That makes sense.
62. I don't know how the hell I've got
Yeah,
here. And I don't
yeah,
feel anything, there's odd aches and pains, obviously, but
yeah,
generally, I mean, I'm thinking, Jesus, like, oh my God, I never expected to be like this. And because I
yeah,
think we have this image in our head, or the image that is that we're all fighting against now, obviously, the
yeah.
stereotyping of someone who's
Yes.
older. And also when you're younger, you think, oh my God, everybody else at 55, 60 is way past it.
Mm,
They're over the hill. They have no
yeah,
idea. They're a generation, whatever. It's not the case anymore. Times have changed. People have changed.
very much so. Yeah.
And, we're at a different point in our lives and a place in our lives. Okay. We're going to go into a commercial break. And when we're back, Lisa's going to tell us what she's getting up to next. Listen up, ladies. You are not invisible after 50. Our mission is clear to empower, uplift, and celebrate all women, regardless of your background, culture, or journey. This is your time to shine. So why not wear the message? Explore our branded merchandise. Own your power by joining our transformative training courses. Or stay inspired by following us on social media for exciting new releases. But that's not all. We want to hear from you. Have you reinvented yourself after 50? Overcome challenges? Refuse to be invisible? Your story matters. DM us on Instagram or visit www.youarenotinvisibleafter50.com to share your journey. Shop, learn, connect, inspire, and change the game. Want to know more about the woman behind the movement? Find me, Kiran Kumar, at www.iamkirankumar.com or on Instagram. We can't wait to connect with you. So now, Lisa, is there anything else that you would like to do in the next couple of years, or what have you got as a broader plan? It's something that you want to achieve?
I'd really like to expand my textile home linen collection and silk scarves because I can't, obviously, I have, there's never enough hours in the day, and I have a lot of ideas of things I'd like to do, but it's also like financial as well. So when I buy the stock or whatever, I have kind of own it. So it's really interesting to kind of see what the best sellers are and what people like it and all the rest of it. So I'd really like to expand on that. I'd really like to do some more online courses and just really continue teaching. I'm looking for an amazing space kind of where I'd love to have my own. Obviously, I don't have space here to have people here, but like when you think of like a typical beautiful Tuscan kind of outside area or something. So yeah, I'm on the hunt for a space that I could kind of call like a permanent studio that people could kind of drop in. I get lots of emails of like, do you have anything on this week, or do you have anything on that week? And because I don't have like a regular kind of like Saturdays and Wednesdays workshops, drop in or something like that. I think that would be great if I could do that in future, so that whenever anyone was traveling, they would know that, on those 3 days of the week or something, they could drop in and do a class or paint or something.
Fantastic idea, I think. Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the bonus part of the podcast?
I do want to say though, just quickly, just rewinding, when we talk about, people saying, what's the dream to live in Tuscany? And a lot of people, I think, paint the whole moving abroad or moving to Italy as being kind of really easy. And it's not, there's a lot of challenges. And I feel fortunate because I have my father as an Italian. And obviously I couldn't have done this transition with my work if it wasn't for my husband and his work and his wage. Financially, there's no way I could have done it. And then also, I think now for a lot of people, in some ways, it's a lot easier with Google Translate, Google Maps, and the internet. But I also feel fortunate that for me, I had this full immersion and I had to learn. It took me a good 6 months before I could really like go and see a movie maybe and speak Italian fluently. Although my boys still like to correct my Italian now when I make a mistake. But yeah, I just kind of, it's not, what am I trying to say? It's not the answer to everything. Do you know what I mean? There's also a lot of challenges here. And I just think that, as much as Tuscany is or anywhere living overseas can be a real kind of draw card, I would say to someone, don't just go there in summer, go there in the winter, go when maybe the season isn't the high one, to see if you like it, if you like the climate. Try and live there maybe for 3 months before you make a move to actually leave everything you have to go somewhere.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of just point that out, because sometimes you'll see
important.
Sometimes, yeah.
I think we always think, I mean, we're always talking about where else we'd like to live, and my daughter says, well, we all say that you always think the grass is greener somewhere else, but every place has its challenges, as you said. And it's important, I think, if one decides to move, then they need to get hold of the language, because it's quite interesting that, we expect everyone to learn English and everyone to know English. But the fact is, that isn't fair. If you're going to adopt a country, you should learn the language, right?
Yeah,
So, in order
definitely.
to kind of get involved in the culture and whatever, and to make the most of it. So, I think there's a lot of learning and preparation that needs to be done. And you're talking about Sherry, you've got to do your research. Sherry
Mm,
Hurst, because otherwise you're in no man's land, and you're not
definitely.
like anything, any situation. I think you do need to have a very good understanding of what you're going to go into.
Mm,
Everything seems idyllic outside the norm. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Like sometimes you see on Instagram these people who talk about everything they hated about a country and they left, and then you find out that they didn't really do their research before they arrived or something. So yeah, I guess I feel lucky that I came at a time when probably tourism wasn't as, you know, saturated as what it is now. And also, like I said, I mean, the internet and social media are wonderful for so many things, but I also feel that it was a very special time that I came.
Mm.
When I first came here, my mother, for my walk, I had my Walkman for the plane trip over, and she gave me the soundtrack to Room with a View. So every time I hear that music, it takes me back to my first
Oh,
time visiting here as well, because it really just evokes all the emotions I felt.
mm. Fantastic. Oh,
Mm.
lovely. Okay, Lisa, let's move on to the bonus part of the podcast. The 5 tips you'd give to anyone who's under 50. What would you say to them?
Well, speaking about travel, I would say travel if you can, especially on your own. I think that traveling solo is just, you really learn so much about yourself, and you will be out of your comfort zone a lot too. But every time I hear about someone who's traveling on their own, or I met someone the other day and her daughter's about to come to Rome for 10 months, and I said, I approve, blah, 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 because, yeah, so definitely travel if you can, especially on your own. Follow your curiosity or that gut instinct about something. You might think, oh, I'd really like to do that, but maybe not. But then that whole thing of like, what if you do and
Mm,
it's the best decision you ever made? Like that idea has popped into your head for a reason, I think. So
mm,
I always try to follow my gut. I've taken jobs that I felt really bad about and realized later it was the worst decision. So I should have listened to my gut. And I've learned the
mm,
hard way as well. But also I've learned, the good things that can come out of kind of like going with the feeling. And then I guess following on from that, don't wait to feel ready for something, because like I said, I like to plan everything, but I think a lot of us kind of think like, oh no, I have to have all these ducks in a row before I can do that. Sometimes, like having children, you just have to like, take the leap. Um, Learn a creative skill. So I really think that anything creative, I mean, cooking's creative, but anything that kind of allows you to express an artistic or creative side to you.
mm,
And like I said, for me, it's a really beautiful therapy as well, not just creating a pretty picture.
mm,
Um, and then I'd say this is a good lesson for me, kind of focus less on the timeline and more on the journey or something. So it's very easy, I think, in hindsight to look back and understand where all the kind of jobs and
mm,
maybe like things that I thought were bad in my life, but maybe ended up being good. Or, maybe, even COVID for me had that silver lining. Who knows when
mm.
I would have picked up the brushes, really, if I had stayed in that job or, and then hadn't. So for me, and actually, I just said to my husband the other day, I go, the one thing I miss about being in lockdown, not having any commitment, not having to do anything or be anywhere or anything. So yeah, that would be probably, that was 5. Yeah, tips for under 50.
Fantastic. And what about the 3 tips to anyone who's over 50? What would you say to them?
Well, I feel I'm just on the tip of the iceberg over 50, so I might not have the knowledge to share, but never too late to start. A lot of people, especially getting back to the creative thing, we're never too old to start to learn a new skill, painting, anything. Um, and I think too, for a lot of, elderly people, especially, it's shown to have been really great for cognitive skills as well,
Mm,
to paint and do something creative. Um, Really good for motor skills and all the rest of it. Um, give yourself permission to pursue something creative, something that brings you joy. I think we all kind of feel like everything has to be productive or profitable, or, we have to, do you know what I mean? We're all
mm,
chasing something. And this is a lesson that really I have to tell myself as well, because I always feel like if I sit down and just lay on my bed for 5 minutes or I'm like, you're wasting time. You're wasting time. What could you be doing now? Go, go, go. Um, Today was the first day my boys are away for the weekend, and it's been so lovely to have the house to myself. Today was the first morning or the first day in like a week that I haven't had something like a work or something to run to or go to, whatever. Um, and so I was really kind of like just saying, shut all the blinds in my room this morning and turn the alarms off because I just thought I wanted you to just wake up when you get up. So I went off on a tangent then, but yeah, it's never too late to begin again. Give yourself permission to enjoy something creative and trust the wisdom you've already earned. So I think that you, Kieran, who have, a little bit older than me, and yesterday when I was teaching these women who are older than me again, I love talking to women that are older than me that have this learned wisdom. And I think that maybe, not that you don't take it for granted, but kind of don't underestimate, like, kind of, the knowledge you have to share with people. And I also, love teaching when I have really young people because you feel like you want to kind of just kind of say to them, you have so much of your life ahead of you. So I think you should really trust, the wisdom and everything that you have learned along the way to get to where you are to kind of share.
I think it's what you just said there about sharing the wisdom. I think it's
Mm.
our duty as women and humans, really, to give back to society and what we learn and what we
Mm.
gain. I say to my kids, and they absolutely bloody hate this, and that's it. I'll say it. They hate the fact when I say, "Well, when I'm no longer here," because of course we know that one day that's going to come. When I'm no
Yeah,
longer
yeah,
here, you're not going to
yeah,
hear all this advice. No one's going to be telling you this. It's not going to be, it's not going to come from the same place that it's meant from. That it's from a good
yeah.
place. So take it on board. I think it's important that because I know that I never had any of this told to me.
No, no,
I haven't
no.
learned it the hard way through
Yeah,
through the stumbles, the dips, the troughs, all of that hard stuff that I've been through. Is that when you come out of it, you think, and you look back at it, you think, oh my God, I learned so much. Now I've got to share that because I say to my
yeah,
kids, I always am saying something to them that will help them on their way
yeah. Me too.
because you want to clear the road for them. Why should they stumble over the same blooming stuff that we stumbled over, right? Why should they?
Yeah,
Why can't you just pave their, and as parents, that's what we want to do anyway, but why can't we pave not just their way, but anybody else's way as well? And I think
definitely.
it's a gift that you give back before you leave the planet. Why not do that? And I think it's really important as humans and as women that we share all of that knowledge with other people and say, here's a gift for you that you'd
Yeah,
like to
like
take. But
here,
yeah.
my son just finished his first year of high school here in Italy. So here in Italy, when you go to high school, you already choose a path. So you choose the school is like languages, artistic, sciences, classics, where they do Greek and Latin and all the rest of it. I think it's quite young to choose already. So my son chose sciences. And then I said to him, just because you choose maybe something now doesn't mean you have to do that for the rest of your life. I said, look at all the jobs mum's had. Look at all the things I've done. I've changed. You can do something and then decide to pivot if you want. And then he said to me just last week, actually, he goes, Mum, I feel like I'm wasting my life. He goes, every morning I get up, I do the same thing. I go to school, I come home. It's just boring. I do the same thing. And I go, yeah, it feels a bit like Groundhog Day. He didn't understand what that meant. And then I said, that's life. And I said, but what you have to understand is that you're building something. So even though you feel like you're doing the same thing every day, Matteo, I said, you are learning and building on that and learning and building and taking in experiences. And I said, and eventually it'll make sense and you'll understand the path and what you have to do. So I said, I'm sorry it seems boring sometimes at the moment. And then I was like, come on, you're about to finish school and have summer vacation. That'll be exciting, won't it? But like, just the way his little head was kind of thinking, I kind of love it. I can tell that, he's going to be someone who, I don't know, I just find it really fascinating that he's already kind of, focusing on this or thinking about it. But yeah, I kind of also kind of said to him, just don't worry about it. Don't, I said, I said, you will be told this as I was told it. These are really amazing years and enjoy them and try not to, I don't know, stress too much or think too much about the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Lisa. Now, give me 3 words that people can use to access your episode.
Well, watercolor, obviously.
Obviously.
Tuscany, or if we want the Italiano, Toscana, so Tuscany,
Ooh.
and I mean, I'm in Florence, the home of the Renaissance. So I think that, like, I guess I have reinvented myself quite a few times. So reinvention really sits in line with Renaissance. Can't decide between those two.
Okay, I'll choose. I'll choose whichever one
Okay,
I
okay.
think at that moment in time. Either of them work. I think we'll go with Renaissance because it's
Okay.
different because we use reinvention
Renaissance
quite.
woman.
Yes,
I like that.
yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, I've already chosen. Right, that's me being decisive. Right, last
Right.
question to you is what do you want women to take away from this conversation?
Uh, I really want them to realize that you can make a decision at whatever stage life you are and change the course of your life. I think a lot of us think that, okay, I'm doing this. This is what I chose. This is where I have to sit. This is where I have to stay. And you never know what that decision will open up for you, you know. And I really believe, like, and I think of, like, the whole kind of like sliding doors film, that kind of thing. I really kind of think about the different decisions and where they led me in my life. And going back to that whole thing where we said that, everything happens for a reason and all the rest
Mm,
of it. So not to be afraid, stay open, and, you know, not to kind of, and I think if you live that way, you won't get to the stage where you have regrets and think, oh, what if I had tried that? What if I had
mm,
trusted my instinct and gone with that? Like, I think that
mm.
that's the worst position to ever be in, to kind of have that kind of regret of not
Yeah.
trying something. Because I've tried things and they've failed or they haven't worked. Fine, I learned from them and maybe I'll tweak them and try it again in a different way. Or maybe I realize, okay, that didn't really work and whatever. But, you tried and you can never, I don't know. I just really kind of always have a little mantra. I remember years and years ago, I remember I was in the car and I was in Australia and I was quite young and I was listening to an interview and there was this woman in her 80s who had gone through a lot of hardship. And she said, I always would tell myself, you're going to be okay. You're going to
Mm.
be okay. And something about that really stuck with me. So I still sometimes say it, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. So that's like a little mantra that I kind of tell myself if I have doubts about something.
I think there's so much there that people can take away, and I'm not going to summarize any of it because I think you said it
Mm.
beautifully. And I just think that, yeah, there's a lot there, and let's leave it at that. All I can say, I don't want to spoil it. All I can say, Lisa, is thank you for being on here. What a delightful conversation, and it's been a pleasure to look at your painting in the background. But
Florals.
it's been a delight that I came across you. And the fact is, I was kind of curiosity led into looking at
Yeah.
your profile and went, here's a lady that I like to talk to. And I'm glad I have. So thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Well, I hope one day you come to Florence and we can share a lovely Negroni or something together. I have to have a Negroni because that was invented in Florence. Okay, the
Okay.
fruit comes from Venice. We have to have a Negroni.
Okay. I'm going to be up for that. Maybe next year, but
Okay,
definitely.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll be here.
So hopefully I'll be here too. But thank you very much for the conversation. And thank you for being on here. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. Seriously. Grazie mille.
Thank you for tuning in to the You Are Not Invisible After 50 podcast. Are you feeling inspired by today's incredible guest? Well, don't stop there. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for more powerful stories of reinvention. Subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. And most importantly, share this podcast with every woman who needs to hear it. Together, we're proving that life after 50 isn't about fading away. It's about rising, thriving, and making an impact. And do you want to be part of this sisterhood? Why not share your story? Your journey could inspire thousands. DM us on Instagram or visit www.youarenotinvisibleafter50.com. We want to hear from you. And are you looking for more? Check out all our products and services on www.youarenotinvisibleafter50.com and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube because this movement is only getting louder. And always remember, life doesn't end at 50, it's just the beginning. We look forward to you connecting with us. Thank you.